Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of IIIT faculty and staff, I warmly invite you to the event of Felicitation of Professor Sangal. So now today, Professor Sangal means not a single person. He is his entire family. So his wife, his children, his mother. So on behalf of Institute, I warmly welcome all of them to this event. This is a celebration for all of us and an emotional moment for all of us. So me, along with my colleague Vasu, so we are conducting this event. So first of all, I would like to invite Professor P.J. Narayanan, Director of this institute, to speak about Professor Sangal. Oh, yeah, we'll start the event with AV and followed by that Professor P.J. Narayanan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this program where we talk about our personal memories or points or whatever about Professor Sangal. For me, surprisingly, the first time I met Professor Sangal was in 1985. I was working at CMC, and there was this AI course being conducted in IIT Kanpur for a 2-week course organized by, all I heard is Rajiv Sangal and Harish Karnik. I'm glad to see both of you here. And it was at that point, where is TV Prabhakar, he had just come to CMC and left also by then. But somehow through him, we heard about this course. So I went and attended the 2-week course in first introduction to Kanpur. Later, I heard through circles, etc., that this IIT Kanpur took a position. They will not give recommendation letters to students to go to US. So, I mean, that was an ideological position with which, I had some resonance with agreement. I don't know, but some resonance with, so that, that stuck in my mind. Late, so of course, people like Dheeraj Sanghi and Sunil Arya, many Kanpur people were PhD students with me, so we used to know about some of the faculty members, and the only two names I could ask about was Rajiv Sangal and Harish Karnik. Of course, the Raja Raman and Mahabala, those names we knew because computer science started with them, but they had left Kanpur already by that time. And later, I came back after 10 years in the US. I came back and joined DRDO in Bangalore. And at some point, when Abdul Kalam was the head of DRDO, when Abdul Kalam left, my own boss, Professor Vidya Sagar, also resigned from DRDO, and then it didn't appear as if staying in CARE was a good idea. And about the same time, CARE, IIIT had started, and Narendra Ahuja had been an old friend of mine. So we started talking to him, and both me and Jawahar both got offers from here. And then we were just wondering, what kind of institution is this? It's a new institution, that's good, but we are leaving pensionable government jobs to come here, just like Rajiv did to come here. Then, I told Jawahar didn't know this story. So I told, see, Rajiv Sangal seemed to have left IIT Kanpur and come here. This must be something. With Narendra Ahuja, not that, I have any disrespect for him. He's very dear friend. He said, he's in the US. This US people are one leg here, one leg there always. So I don't know. But Rajiv Sangal, that must, that was the stamp of approval of IIIT, and that made a major role in me joining. And after that, of course, I had 13, 14 glorious years working with him, learning a lot from him. One of the things that I just want to point out, which and after which I'll stop, because there are many people, it's not for us to talk about Rajiv Sangal, we had long association. One thing I learned from many interactions is that, when you talk about a new idea or new thing to be done, there will be enough people who say, oh, it won't work in that case, it won't work in that case, which is all valid. I mean, it's not a negative attitude. But, so there will be many cases where your idea will fail or will not be optimal. But what you have to do is you find out the 5 or 6 cases where your idea will work, and then see that when the idea works, when this thing works, is that worth all the other potential negatives? Because you cannot create anything if you want to remove all negative points about it. It's impossible. So you look at what works, look at the positive points. What can we do? What can this idea do? And then evaluate the negatives in the light of these positives, and then you can take a decision. Otherwise, because negatives alone come from other people. Because people think positives need not be said. I'm not even saying somebody is being malicious or something, but that's the attitude. But that's the way people react. So that's one thing that I try to, whenever some similar situation arises in IIIT, we look at any idea and see if what are the positives from it, and is it worth the small negatives that may be. So that, and the many other things I learned from him, and I hope in the last 9 years that I've been director, we have been able to, I was lucky to inherit a very well-formed institution with strong values and strong academic basis. I hope the journey that I could, lead it for the last 9 years have been, and did not spoil the good image that he created. And I think he has sown enough seeds here that it's strong enough to grow in the future also. I wish Rajiv and the whole family the very best. And we'll continue to be engaged with you. We have some plans for you. We'll reveal later to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pijayan. Now I request Sri Chandrasekhar Garu, who was the visionary, and he advised about IIIT, and few other people. All these people met, and IIIT happened. And Professor Sangal was the first formal director, full-time director of IIIT Hyderabad. And I request Chandrasekhar Garu to speak about his association and what happened in those initial days. Sir.
Professor Rajiv Sangal, Professor P.J. Narayanan, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As a person who has been very, very closely associated with IIIT in the early days when it was founded, and when it was still fledgling institution. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be back here in the institution, meeting many old friends and some new faces as well. A lot of new faces as well, if I may add. So first and foremost, I want to thank IIIT for inviting me here and remembering me on this occasion, but more importantly, for making it on this particular occasion when we are felicitating Professor Rajiv Sangal and his contributions. I want to go back a little bit to some of those early days, not because that was the time when I was there, not because I want to take you down a nostalgia trip, but mainly because I want to put Professor Rajiv Sangal's contributions to this institution in a context which many may not be fully aware of. This institution started as a effort by government and industry. I remember those early days when the idea of the institute was born. Essentially, that was a time when there was no IIT, there was no IIM or ISB, there was no law school, there was nothing. So even conceiving of this in that situation, it was both a necessity as well as a dream, a bit of a pipe dream, if I may add. And obviously the CM, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who is renowned for his very, very energetic and thoughtful and visionary pursuit of IT, was firmly behind the idea. And we knew that industry wanted something like this. And the one person who we knew could give us the best advice was Professor Raj Reddy, who was then by then already a doyen of artificial intelligence. So at that time, we wanted to create an institution and build a world-class institution. And I still remember that, when Professor Raj Reddy, at that time, he was just advising broadly. I don't think even he dreamt of the way in which he would be associated. But he said, do you even know what a world-class institution means? And do you even know what it takes to create a world-class institution? And frankly, we really didn't know too much. So it was an aspirational statement. It was a little bit like, how it reminded me of a small episode many years later, which happened with my daughter, when we had gone to the market. And my son, at the end of a weekend of revelry, he was then about, I think, 10 or 12 years old, suddenly remembered that he needed a map, outline map for some homework of his. So he said, I need a map, and he insisted because it was due on Monday. So while we were in the car, my daughter kept insisting that I also want the map, I also want the map. And we, as parents, chose our battles. So we decided, let's give it to her because it costs 2 paisa or 3 paisa. So he said, okay, you can also have the map. So that confused the heck out of her because she didn't know what it meant. So she turned to her brother and said, Bhaiya, map kya hota hai? What is a map? So we were like that, we wanted a world-class institution, but we didn't know quite what a world-class institution was or how to actually get there. And the one thing which became clear after the discussion with Professor Raj Reddy was that you needed an inspirational figure at the top and a very, very passionate deliverer at the helm of the affairs. So there was a small drama which was played in front of the CM. To cut a long story short, at the end of it, Professor Raj Reddy was left with no option but to accept the chairmanship of the institution. Later, he told me, you tricked me into this. And I said, yes, I'm sorry, but I had no other way of doing this once you had told us how difficult a job it is. So then, of course, in the initial years, we had a part-time director only because it was not easy to get somebody into an institution which was not even born. It was not a government institution. So there were questions of credibility and so on. And Professor Ahuja came as a part-time director, and I think he did take a few significant steps, most of all being that his insistence on the quality of the faculty. So by the time, so this whole effort of IIIT was initiated in 1997. All questions were open at that point. Should it focus on research? Should it focus on degrees? Should it focus on, incubators, or should it focus on undergrad, postgraduate? All questions were open. That was the level of initial clarity. So all of these questions progressively got answered. At that time, even though Professor Sangal was not formally at the head, he was already here at the University of Hyderabad, and a lot of consultations were made. I remember the OSD, Mr. Ajay Sahni, who was working with me, he was made the OSD for this institution, because we realized that from the government side, it required a lot of follow-up. And he spent hours and hours with Professor Sangal. I'm sure you will recall all of that. And initial attempts to rope him in as a director perhaps was not as successful as we were, and maybe we didn't quite trick him in the same way that we had got Professor Rajireddy in. But by the time he actually finally agreed to take on the responsibility, IIIT had already been in a formal sense in existence for about 5 years. And, some foundations were laid, some cornerstones were laid, but it was nowhere near being not just an internationally recognized institution, it was not even at that point a nationally recognized institution. So that was the stage at which he came to the helm of affairs in 2002. My own personal association, unfortunately, ended in 2001 because I moved to Delhi and went on to other responsibilities. But then, as an old Hyderabadi, once in a while I used to come, and I was in touch with a lot of the people. So that is, I think, the material, the clay, which was handed over to Professor Rajiv Sangal. And from there, we assiduously built over the next 10 years an institution which really shot to the top in the national canvas, behind perhaps only the IITs and perhaps ahead of even some of them in certain respects, especially notably in research. I used to read a book which talked about what makes a boxing world champion. At one level, it's that one fantastic knockout punch, the left hook, which knocks the opponent flat for the count. But at another level, it is years and years of arduous practice, training, and so many things. Professor Sangal's style was the latter. He was not a flashy kind of thing, but he really actually looked at all the nitty-gritties that are required. What are the weaknesses which need to be addressed? What are the strengths which need to be addressed? The one good thing, however, which we did was to make it a completely non-governmental institution with complete flexibility to the institution's management, basically, which meant Professor Rajireddy and the board of governors under him. And of course, most important, the pivot, the linchpin, the director of the institution. So I think that was really what he was able to shape into what it is today, and where it is certainly quite at the top. At that time, we wanted it to be close to the industry, but there were lots of challenges in terms of how do you align academia and industry. And even that today has happened because the kind of funding that is coming in from industry and the way in which it has been channeled into the research agenda of the institution, and combining both to bring it up as an institution of excellence. I think for all this, the credit in addressing so successfully all the existential dilemmas, I think very, very large part of that credit goes to Professor Sangal as the first full-time director of the institute and bringing it into shape. What I also realized, and perhaps today was sort of revalidation of that, is that to build such an institution, you not just need to be an academist, but you really also need to be a humanist. And that's what I think he was able to combine so well and create the atmosphere, because a lot of the things that go to create such a world-class institution is very intangible things. The course, the research, and the faculty and the students, all of that is fine. But then there are these intangible things as to what kind of values you inculcate, how open it is, etc. And I think all of us have had a taste of that and heard from Professor Sangal himself. So I know that there are many people who have a lot of things to say about Professor Sangal. I don't want to sort of eat into their time, but I do want to say that for a person of his knowledge, experience, and expertise, uh, he won't be or shouldn't be allowed to slide into retirement. No doubt he can spend time, as much time with his grandchildren as he wants, but I do hope that he will continue to contribute to the cause of education in ways that he himself can choose, because I think a person of his eminence can certainly help multiple institutions. His experimentation with IIT, BHU, and BHU, which he spoke about, he said that some of it was based on failures here. So his willingness and ability to experiment and carry people along for that journey, I think, has been yet another very, very important trait. Although, as far as IIIT Hyderabad is concerned, we parted company, but there were several occasions later when I was in Delhi, when I was secretary there, and there were many occasions when he and our paths kept crossing. So we have remained in touch, and most recently in yet another enterprise to try and model a university focused on emerging technologies in another part of this erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh, where again he came forward very readily to lend his knowledge. So I think at heart he remains young, but the irony of life is that retirement is based on chronological age and not the age of your heart. So Professor Sangal, I wish you a wonderful and most enjoyable retirement and contented retirement, but definitely a productive phase, but a new kind of productive phase as you go forward. So all the best to you, and my very best wishes and my compliments on what you have been able to accomplish at IIIT here and the kind of inspiration that you have provided to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We are also expecting a more than a decade productive years from Professor Sangal. Yeah, now I request Shri Ajay Sahani ji. Sir, yeah. So Ajay Sahani sir is from the government. He was associated with the institute right from the beginning as a special officer. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, and my greetings to everyone who is assembled there, especially Sri R. Chandrasekhar. I think Professor Rajreddy has participated through a video recorded message. Professor Sangal and Mrs. Sangal and the entire family. Professor P.J. Narayanan, Professor Hema Murthy, and also all the professors and faculty and staff of IIIT Hyderabad and other dignitaries who have joined in. It's a great pleasure for me to be participating in this program today. Right in the beginning of when IIIT was to start, I was drawn into this, and I have really enjoyed the entire journey, and the institution has come up extremely well. So I would like to look back at the time that we had spent in the very initial time in giving shape to this institution, and in all of that, the person who contributed maximum, who really gave shape to what the institution was to become, has been Professor Sangal. So in April 1998, 25th of April to be precise, the Atal Bihari government was coming in, and the IK Gujral government had fallen, and I came back to Hyderabad at that time. And I was given this interesting offer of being the special officer for IIIT. Mr. R. Chandrasekhar sort of inducted me in. And then around 9th May of that year, we had a meeting, and it was also decided that we should get the institution started the very same year, 1998. Not wait, not spend more than a year or year and a half to sort of give shape to it. So that's where the journey started, and I was so lucky. In fact, government of Andhra Pradesh and all of us were exceptionally lucky to find Professor Sangal um, doing a stint with University of Hyderabad. So of all places, from IIT Kanpur, he was spending time in University of Hyderabad and spending time on his the area of his passion, the language technologies, and also helping out Satyam at that period. But because he was present in Hyderabad, and he was so enthusiastic when we requested for his guidance and participation. He was so enthusiastic, and that Professor Sangal and I spent hours and hours, sometimes late into the night, discussing all facets of what the new institution should be like. We were simply told that it should be a world-class institution. As Sri Chandrasekhar has mentioned, I had no idea of what a world-class institution is, and how to sort of establish something like that. Professor Sangal came with tremendous clarity on the most important issues. Number one, the issue of whether it should be it should focus on being a finishing school. The maximum demand from the industry was that we need a finishing school. We have lots of people graduating from a large number of colleges, and they are not ready for doing jobs with the IT industry, and IT industry is booming, and we need them in large numbers. So the government should help set this up as a finishing school. So the very first thing that we did was to discount that and to say that that is not what this institution is going to be. The second point was whether it should be only for postgraduate education and research, or how much focus should be there on undergraduate education. IITs at that point of time were primarily known for undergraduate education, and postgraduate education and PhD programs were there, but they were in some sense, less prominent in case of all the IITs than their undergraduate programs. So again, with guidance from Professor Sangal, we arrived at this sweet spot that this will be about half and half. About half the students and the efforts that the institution puts in would be towards an undergraduate program. About half of the energy and the seeds and everything we do will go towards MTech, MS by research, and PhD programs. So this was a very important sort of thing to decide, because then it becomes clear as to how to go about getting such an institution in place. Initially, we also looked at what are the strengths of IITs, because IITs were the only institutions we knew reasonably well. So, of course, Professor Sangal had studied abroad, so he knew about the manner in which the premier universities function there. But I had no idea, no clue about that. So I think it was also fairly clear that the institution needed to have a very strong connect with the industry. We had found lip service being paid to that concept, but not really it's getting implemented in the IITs. we found that in IITs, there were a few more things, as we discussed various things in detail. We also found a number of things about IITs which we were sort of not very happy with. We thought that those are the areas that we can improve upon. And taking advantage of the new institution being focused on computer science and electronics, I think Professor Sangal helped bring in very significant changes in the curriculum with introducing some parts of computer science in the very beginning, right from first semester, and then bringing the depth courses, the breadth courses later. So depth first and breadth later meant that when the students had were very familiar with programming and many facets of computer science, they could apply that knowledge to anthropology or to anything else that came later as a part of the breadth courses. So all of these, and I think a large number of other changes, which I don't, I don't know how much to mention about that. Also, that we would not have departments. We would have research teams, we would have research cells, we would have research centers, but not divide the institute into departments, because we didn't want the silos that departments end up becoming, as we had seen in many of the other universities. All of these and many, many more thoughts have all come in from Professor Sangal. Also, the stellar thought of concentrating on value education and on sort of building confidence of the students in a very different way, not by not sort of helping them to be able to show off, but helping them to be down to the ground and down to earth, and to be able to focus on applying their knowledge towards solving India's problems. These are the concepts that I have learned sitting for hours and hours with Professor Sangal. Today, these are also very clearly embedded into the ethos of IIIT Hyderabad. And I'm so delighted that whatever he has brought in as tremendous knowledge and wisdom, we have been able to make use of it to a large extent. Later, after I moved to Government of India, I think we also took help from Professor Sangal in preparing a report for 20 new IIITs in the country. And these have again, all these IIITs have come up, and I think it's the models that Professor Sangal and Professor Ahuja brought in were can be seen in many of the new institutions as well. As we now, later on, I have also remained very closely associated with IIIT and Professor Sangal's work, especially in the area of language technologies. And I am truly delighted that under his guidance, just a couple of days ago, Honorable Prime Minister has launched a program called Bhashini, which is a national platform for language technologies. This, I think, will also be one of the stellar contributions that comes in from Professor Sangal. And I look forward to seeing how it shapes and how it changes what we are able to accomplish in this country. Thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you today. And I wish all the best to Professor Sangal I hope he remains associated with Bhashini. He remains associated with IIIT Hyderabad. He remains associated with the concepts of value education, and he remains associated with many of the other institutions that he has helped strengthen. Thanks a lot once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your experiences with Professor Sangal. Now I request Sri Siniraju Garu, who is associated with the institute right from the beginning as a member of governing council.
So I will not repeat the same things because there are three of us here, that is Mr. Chandrasekhar Garu and Ajay Sahani, and we all came around the same time, but I would like to share a few other anecdotes that are not covered here today. So my association came little earlier than that. I just came out as a CEO of what is currently known as Cognizant, and then doing a little bit of consulting work for the Mr. Chandrababu Naidu. He liked to see the PPTs those days. It's very fancy for him. Somebody makes all these things. And he said that, why USA is doing so well. When I go there, most of the people that I meet are Indians. If the Indians are competent, why same thing is not happening here? Also, he asked the question, same, Bangalore is ahead of us. I see there are a lot of Telugu people there in Bangalore. So Bangalore also doing. Then we came up with this hypothesis saying that, the universities that are in the East Coast, in and around Boston, and the universities that are in and around Silicon Valley, they created the talent, and from there, a lot of innovation came in. Many big companies got built up. Same thing to Bangalore also. We said there's a IISc Bangalore, and a lot of tech companies moved there. And he said, then we should have the same thing here. He really had the audacity to he used to say everything world class. Though we, like Mr. Chandrasekhar said, it's not. We were far from it, but nothing wrong to dream. So we were doing it. And my association here, I just want to just share a few things here. Accidentally, I was just loyal. I was in the corridors of the Mr. Chandrasekhar's office. He said, sign here. So what is it? I was reading. He said, you don't have to read. You're not writing any of your things. They just sign it. That's how I became the signatory to the society that came into being a Indian Institute of Information Technology. Thank you, Chandrasekhar Garu. Today you are here. I say it many times because it was an accidental thing that came in. And since that day, for obvious reasons, he had to move to Delhi, and then Ajay Sahani also helped us in the beginning, and also he had to move to Delhi. But I stayed back. I'm here from that day. Then subsequently, Professor Rajiv came in, and all the things that have been shared here. The few of my associations with him is that when first, Professor Sangal came here, I was already, in a smaller way associated with him as part of that time I was in Satyam Computer Services. So he was helping us in some technology areas and advising us. So we came in, and then the friendship started like this, and I don't have to say the most unassuming person. That the few things that I would like to share that what went on is that the Jivan Vidya part that has been brought in with I don't know if he was your classmate, Mr. Ganesh Bagaria or something, but they built that. Today more than 500 universities or maybe more, they follow the work that they have done that was developed here. The students were actually criticizing, saying that we have come here to learn computer science. Why are you forcing us to go through these 2 weeks of the Jivan Vidya Shivir that was being, every student was asked to go through it. And then after the first session, then people came back and said, sorry, we were resisting it, but we think that's very useful to us. That's, I would say, is one of his biggest contributions for not technology, but more of a character building of any individual. The second one is, the normal engineering colleges. Most of you who are here today, came from IITs or other places. There used to be ragging kind of thing. So, and in IIIT, they said, what ragging kind of here? This is just 2 boys. They tried doing something first time. What's the punishment the institute has given under his leadership? They said, we're not going to do anything. You go to Himalayas and serve there for a while. For 1 semester, they were sent away. I don't remember the place, but they went there. They came back. They said, that's the thing. So we are not going to punish you. And they didn't lose a semester, by the way. The semester that they were away, it was counted part of the credits here. The third one, he wanted at some point said that I want to do something different, wanted to leave. So we, the board members, we were not willing to lose him. So he kept on threatening, saying that, no, we want to leave. See, so it's one term over, two terms over, then few more years. Then the way he convinced us is being saying that, it's been my dream to go and serve the university that is founded by Professor Madan Mohan Malaviya. So nobody could ever say no for it. The opportunity came in the form of a BHU IT, which is in the same campus once upon a time, but now it's a separate institution. But the happiest moment, I'm sure, I don't know if you would share, but for me, from my interaction with him, is that short period that he became the Vice Chancellor of Banaras in the university. That was the high point of, at least my interaction with him has been this, it was very satisfied that, I'm at the same place that, Sri Madan Mohan Malaviya has started. So then again, we tried to bring back, it's already been shared about, is the key figure in formulating the strategies or the framework for the new IIITs. So that 20 of them, Government of India started. Quite a few of them follow the same model. Some of them may not, but because also the same people from here went to some of the institutions like Kottayam, Professor P.J. Narayanan have been involved in the IIIT Sri City, and there are quite a few of the other people who went there, trying to put the same kind of framework, try to do it, not as successfully, but I'm sure one day they would also do it. So there's a lot of contributions at different stages of his life. So this is, for me, my association with him has been as long as, he's been here in Hyderabad. And now probably my memory goes back probably something 25, 24 years kind of thing. All that I can say is that please continue to be associated with us here. I hope I'll be around here for some more time. But I was just requesting in whatever capacity it is. This is our mother institution for us. So I wish all the best to the family. I know that you want him more of his time. We understand that. But you can choose the time, what time you want to spend, when you want to spend. But please do come back every year, live with us here among these places, and then hopefully that our association can continue for a long time. Rajiv, Sangal, namaste, and all the professors.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I request Sri Ajit Rangnikarji, who is a governing council member of IIIT Hyderabad, to speak about his association with Professor Sangal.
Namaste, Professor Sangal, and to all of you. My association with Professor Sangal actually started somewhere around 2003 or 2004. At that time, I was next door at ISB. And on the way, I used to keep seeing this institution. I said, what is happening here? So I said, let me find out. So one fine day, I called up and said, I want to come and see. And, from that day that you took me around and showed me everything, that's where my fandom of IIIT started. As somebody who was struggling, and honestly quite unsuccessfully initially, to build a research-driven institution, it was an eye-opener to see what you had done. And in these last almost 20 years that I've been associated, that was not a one-off. It is easy in this country to start something, but to institutionalize it and to make it permanent is a huge, huge achievement. And without the national resources which IITs had, or we in ISB had, let's say, a lot more resources than you had. So that has always commanded my enormous admiration. And even now when I come and I see the quality of faculty, the passion to high quality research, the willingness to do a wide variety of things, not just technically, but also societally. That is an enormous, enormous achievement. And thank you so much for doing it. I really, really appreciate it. I think that's something that I hope you'll always cherish for what you've done. There were two other things that happened. Firstly, I was convinced that this was an institution whose work needed to be talked about outside. So PJN calls me the unofficial brand manager of IIIT. And I'm proud of it because I think there's some amazing, normally what happens is it's exactly the opposite. People talk more than what they've done. And here's an institution which has done so much more and was not talking about it. So it always gives me pleasure and pride when I talk about what all of you are doing. And I'm sure that you will continue to do that great work until such time as I have got my brains hopefully in the right place, I will continue to do this. The second thing that you did was you opened my eyes to the use of technology in areas like agriculture. I had no knowledge whatsoever that people could put sensors in the soil, people could measure. And I said, that day was, oh my God, wow, what is all of this? Today, I run for the state government, an institution which focuses on innovation in agriculture, health, and sustainability. A lot of that credit goes to you. You created that understanding. And today, when I see those startups and they're making claim, I said, oh, I've seen a lot of this 20 years ago. So thank you so much. You've been a wonderful influence, although I've never had the opportunity to tell you what I feel. One last thing I'll tell you. I'm in my third career, not even second. And every single day of that is as fulfilling as it always was. May yours be even more than mine. Thank you.
Great words by you, sir. Now I request Professor Kaul, who has taken his first class in IIIT on September 2nd, 1998.
Professor P.J. Narayanan, Mr. Chandrasekhar, distinguished faculty present, as well as retired one like me, and students of this institute, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to extend my felicitation to the intellectual architect of this institute, Professor Rajiv. He built this institute with particular point, there'll be no ragging in the institute. It did happen a little, and his method was very simple. He'll call the student, make him feel that he has done a wrong thing. Then he asked him to do some extra courses and do some social work here. And with that, I believe the ragging is stopped. I hope it continues to this day. His persona can be encapsulated in a few words. Erudite, yet ascetic, and utterly self-effacing. Above all, he has a rare polished quality. He will extend a favor to you and will not make you feel it. I add a personal note. Back in 2005, he was to go to Scotland to attend a conference. I was lying critically ill in a hospital. He canceled his visit and arranged for some students to be there all the 24 hours. Then again, in 2011, I underwent bypass surgery. And he and his wife were out. My wife was sitting outside shivering. They both, Prof. Sangal and his wife Nisha, I sat either side of my wife, holding her hand and consoling and encouraging them. This is the man that Professor Rajiv Sangal is. On this occasion, I wish him all the health, and I hope he continues to support and do the work for this institute. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request Professor Rajat Muna to speak about his association with Professor Sangal.
Thank you. And Professor P.J. Narayanan, thank you very much for inviting us, because these 2 days for us had been reliving our memory. And no, this is to invite us. Okay. And also, so I think I want to actually tell everybody that my association with Professor Sangal started long time back, when he joined IIT Kanpur in 1982. That's the time, so it's like now close to 40 years, that wherever he has been, whichever place, I have gone and visited him. Whether it is in Hyderabad or in Indore or in Banaras or Kanpur or wherever. In fact, we have met number of times in various places in Delhi. And whenever he came to Kanpur, he was my neighbor because his brother was my neighbor. So we would actually have morning tea together and all that kind of things. He, Rajiv, Nisha, Sapna, Gonu, we all have kind of grown together. When I joined, Rajiv was the head of the department. And I remember when I had my interview, in the evening, I was staying in the guest house and there was a dinner that was organized. And I was also invited. Usually, faculty candidates are not invited for the dinners. Okay, selection committee members are. But then I was also there in the dinner. I mean, that particular time, all faculty candidates were also invited for the dinner. At the end, when we were going, we had no inkling that I'm selected or not selected. And that is the kind of secrecy and that is the kind of value that IIT Kanpur actually imbibed. Okay. And important thing that we need to understand is, in IIT Kanpur, there was no hierarchy. We could actually go and walk into anybody's office, whether it is head or even director. I mean, of course, if the director is busy with some people, you probably have to wait just a little bit outside, but he will never say, no, don't come and meet. And we had a good time with Rajiv. Rajiv, just to give you a little bit of time understanding of this, when I joined IIT Kanpur, Gonu was just learning how to walk. And to us as a faculty member, like, we were very young, we had no clue, we did not even know agar humko dal kharidna hai, kahan se kharide, which place is a good place and all that. And I think Rajiv and Nisha, they were like mentors to every new faculty member in the department, and they really mentored us very well. Now, having said that, we eventually grew in the department together professionally. I still remember, and I want to actually mention this story. There was a MTech student by name Neetu Chaudhary. She registered with me for doing her MTech thesis. And her project that we actually chose was to design, and this I'm talking of way back, design a terminal on X Windows on Linux systems, which can display Hindi text using the coding method that was known as SCI at that time. Indian Standard Code for Information Interchange. I'm being a little more technical, but I want to really say, because that's the kind of thing which I want to recount how Rajiv's methods were. And Rajiv's methods were the following. So Rajiv, basically, this girl, she started normal MTech thesis. We do a little bit of study of the background work and then do some proposal and implement and all that, testing and all that. In this particular case, Rajiv was in a hurry. So Rajiv says, no, all study she can do, let us start the project first. Okay. And I said, okay. And we were jointly supervising. She probably did not have too many guts to say to Rajiv, you're pushing me a little too hard. But she'll come and tell me, you're pushing me a little too hard. But I said, okay, we will enjoy it at the end of it. That was a time when MTech thesis was for 18 months. In IIT Kanpur, especially in computer science department, people will take 21 months to 26 months on an average. This girl finished in 14 months. And after 14 months, she comes back and says, what do I do next? I said, go and enjoy your life now. And she was so happy because she was, at that time, in about 17 months time, somebody could defend the thesis and go. And she actually went home for a month, came back, and was very happy that, and then I one day talked to her and say, you see, how much is the effect of pushing people? And she was really thankful to that. And not only that project was successful, that project was actually used by several researchers who were working in Indian languages subsequently. It was Bina Vansal who used it for her thesis, several other students who used it for own thesis, and this became a very good successful product even for Ministry of IT. So Ministry of IT in all its reports will say item, okay. Of course, things have migrated, moved on and all that. Now this is not a issue any longer to display Indian language text on the computer screens and all that. But those were the times where very interesting aspects were taken into account. I and Rajiv have also worked on several things subsequently. Lately, it has been Bhashini platform where several projects were evaluated, Rajiv being the chairman of this committee. And the Prime Minister day for yesterday launched it. We both were there in Gandhinagar. He launched it. He had a lot of very good words to say. In fact, one of the best things that he said was that 7 years back, I was here in this forum to launch Digital India. At that time, in 2015, nobody thought that Digital India will be a successful thing. Today, everybody works with mobile. People actually said that mobile phones, people don't have mobile phones, people don't have computer access, people don't have internet, this, that. How will Digital India work? And today it is a reality because of Digital India, all queues have disappeared from everywhere. And then he went on to say something else, and he said, today we are launching Bhashini, which is actually empowering people to express themselves in their own languages, work with their own languages, and believe me, 5 years later, everybody will be talking of that they are able to work with their own languages. That is the strength that that is the faith and trust he put on Bhashini platform. And I think Rajiv has actually architected it very well, saying how research and giving it to the society in terms of startup ecosystem, as well as making sure that it is successful. Every ingredient is put in. I think I must say this, Rajiv is one of the great engineers in engineering even these solutions. So, together, me and my wife owe a lot to this family, both Rajiv, Nisha, and not just Rajiv, Nisha, even our son. He has a lot of things to actually say for Gonu and Sapna. So together, I think we have had a very good mentorship. Thank you, Rajiv, for this. And we will continue to come and visiting you wherever you are. Thank you very much.
To share a few of my views about Professor Rajiv. He always used to, whenever we were talking over phone or meeting, he used to identify himself as Rajiv. He never used to say, this is Sangal. I think many things have been mentioned about his contribution to IIIT. But I think as my association with him goes back to beginnings of my chairmanships of higher education in Hyderabad. And in 2004, as soon as I joined, I had a meeting with Professor Raj Reddy. And Professor Raj Reddy and me, we had an occasion to discuss with Dr. Y.S. Rajsekhar Reddy. And from that day onwards, I, Professor Raj Reddy, along with Professor Rajiv Sangal and few other friends from IIIT Hyderabad, people like Professor Venkateshwarlu, we were all working on a program, on a project. The outcome of the project was Rajiv Gandhi University of Knowledge Technologies. That was the occasion on which I had sometimes borrow the time, borrow the resources, and also we were also trying indirectly to support IIIT Hyderabad. I think when we went to Dr. Rajasekhar Reddy, there was a long pending issue with the government, AP government, a piece of land that IIIT Hyderabad was asking. I think it was pending. Raj Reddy asked me, how can we resolve this? I told him, no, don't worry, sir, we will resolve it. Three of us went to Dr. Rajasekhar Reddy. I only told him that IIIT Hyderabad will mentor Rajiv Gandhi University. And as long as IIIT Rajiv Gandhi University, thanks to IIIT Hyderabad, is also popularly known as IIITs. Whether repeatedly, I think PJ Narayanan also sometimes say, what is this? Rajiv Gandhi University is also called as IIIT. And it's again the impact of IIIT Hyderabad. And we are happy about it. We are happy about it. And then immediately he called the file, and they never expected that that issue would be resolved at a fast pace. About Professor Rajiv, I would like to say that is a unique and rare combination of tradition with modernity. I think there were some occasions when we both used to, not a question of disagree with Mr. Raj Reddy. Education should not produce always machines. Education should produce human beings. I think Professor Sensekar, Shri Ajay Sahani, and many other friends have articulated as to how Professor Rajiv made IIIT Hyderabad contribute to the societal well-being. I think 2 days we have been discussing on the role of values in education. Whether one likes it or not, in our anxiety to get into technological revolution, information revolution, and erosion of values and our cultural ethos. Fortunately for us, national education policy or new education policy is focusing on some of these issues. IIIT Hyderabad, and again borrowing the same spirit from IIIT Hyderabad, Rajiv Gandhi University of Knowledge Technology, both are essentially broad-based in the sense that we also believe in a multidimensional approach to academic issues. We don't say that IIIT Hyderabad is one institution that has come up with the concept of ESOGU. As one friend was saying, and very appropriately, that technology applying to agriculture, well, that's of course an extremely relevant and useful thing. And then the other one, I think my friend from IIT Kanpur has left, and he was saying that the way IIIT Hyderabad under the leadership of Professor Rajiv Sangal contributed to the languages, and that's one area which is likely to become in the years to come a major. I think we are all now saying that everybody should try to learn in his or mother's tongue, and when you have the appropriate technology, that's where I think my friend Sri Srini Raju will agree with me that we should not only talk about corporate social responsibility. I think time has come that we need to also focus on institution social responsibility. That's where IIIT Hyderabad will be in the forefront. Institutions to start an institution, and then to start an institution, to grow it and sustain it, and then make it a permanent and world-class institution under public-private partnership. Probably in this country, IIIT Hyderabad will stand out as number one. That's largely the contribution of the team that has started it. Dr. Raj Reddy, Dr. Rajiv Sangal, and few other friends, including Sri Chandrasekhar, Sri Srini Raju, and all others. I think this model will ultimately bring in a large number of other models, which is the need of the hour. Coming about the personal traits of Rajiv, he looks very unusual, unassuming, not very, by appearance, very firm. But when it comes to the question of issues, he is very firm. He never gives the impression that he will displease somebody on some score. But he is one person who would always like to call a spade spade. I think the modern administrators, academic administrators, you have a model in Dr. Rajiv Sangal. And unassuming, completely academic, combining administration with academics, but never allowing academics to, or administration to override academics. Never allowing administration to override academics. Firm is in his decisions, but with a smiling face, always. And I do hope that Professor Rajiv and his family, I don't believe for an academic like him, nothing like retirement. It's always from one phase to another, from one area to another area. The world requires the services of such people. I think he's a selfless academic. He never thought about his personal interests. Otherwise, somebody working in IIT Kanpur, a pensionable job, leaving that, joining to IIIT Hyderabad, which was not an established one, and not sure about public-private partnership, coming in here was not certainly an easy task. He had the passion. He liked it. He wanted to make this institution. And it's a reality because of his conviction and commitment. We all need to acknowledge his contribution with folded hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I request Professor Dheeraj Sanghi to speak about his association with Professor Sangal. And after that, I request Professor P.R.K. Rao Garu.
Thank you very much. So my association with him started when I was a student at IDK 40 years ago. He taught me several courses, In fact, today morning only we were remembering some of those. If I remember correctly, I think there were 2 full courses and 1 half course. There was a course on databases, there was a course on AI, and I think there was a course in which we learned multiple languages, and he taught us Lisp. And I particularly remember the database course because I don't think that was like his area of research or something, but the way we were taught, and so I was telling him today that when I went for higher studies in Maryland, and there was some course in which B trees were being taught, and I said, I already know about it. He says, these were like newer data structures 40 years ago. And I said, I learned this in my database course. And so that was Rajiv, even though he is teaching a course which is not his own area of strength, he will learn about it, what is the latest in the world in that particular area, and teach that. So we were really very lucky to have him as a faculty member. And of course, like Rajat talked about, he left. When I joined back a few years later as a faculty in IITK, I mean, the IITK was a very special place at that time. Okay. And I was married 11 months later. In those 11 months, I've never eaten at my home. And I've never eaten in a restaurant either. Okay. So there was like, every two, if I didn't go to his house for like 2-3 weeks, it was like, what has happened? Are you upset or what's going on? You are alone. You must be eating at other people's places. Right? So I owe a lot of debt to him for all the mentoring, all the support, all the, so it was really fun working with him as a colleague. And as again, Rajat said, we really have a very different relationship in IITK. It was never Professor Sangal or Sir or whatever. It was always Rajiv, even though, he's so much more senior to me. So thank you very much. And it's really nice to be here, meeting all the friends and particularly meeting you and family. Thank you.
I have heard in the last 2 days views from what I would generally describe as the other marketplace. What I wish to say in a short while is from the academic marketplace to which I belonged. What is it that distinguishes the academic marketplace from the other marketplace? One can go on debating. What one useful way of approaching that issue would be to talk about what is education. To my understanding, after having been in that most glorious profession, or the second oldest profession, as they say, is education is about forgetting what you have been taught all the way. To be educated is to forget what all has been taught to you. It means to be in a position to be able to think, live on your own. And it is somewhat disconcerting for a person in my station of life to recognize we nowadays have forgotten about this idea of forgetting, and instead go about talking all the time about preparing for living. Education has become not living. Pasternak has a beautiful statement. Life is not meant for preparing, it's meant for living. Now education has become one of the trade practices to live, to prepare for living, not to live. I thought that is a total inversion of what education is all about. To forget what you have been taught. This is not to ignore what you have been taught, but to be able to arrive at a station in which or from which you will be able to live in a way which you may call it happiness, which you may call it socially just, which you may call it intellectually elevating. You can use any words that you like. But the idea of education as a distinctive purpose, different from what goes on in the other marketplace. That's the reason why academic institutions are kept far off from the other marketplace. We seem to be increasingly forgetting this main distinction, so much so we have not even asked in this 2-day seminar about what is the connection between the yesterday's proceedings and today's proceedings. Yesterday's proceedings was about AI, languages, language learning, machine learning languages, and so forth. And today we are talking about felicitating not a machine, but a concrete individual called Rajiv Sangal, whom I normally describe as the 75 emergency batch student. So it is appropriate at this stage to ask this question: what is education all about? So it is interesting to go back and look in history. What is education about? It used to be called trivium. Trivium is not trivial. Trivium is something which is threefold. You're supposed to learn in education to that process which whereby you can become independent. You know, one of my favorite statement is, don't walk ahead of me, I will not follow. Don't walk behind me, I will not lead. Walk by my side and be my friend. That is what it means to be educated living. It is not that I don't agree with the other. It is not that I disagree with the other, or it is not that I agree with the other. But I have my own way of looking at things and not go on preparing eternally. You know, we give a lot of importance being spontaneous. To be spontaneous is to forego the idea of preparing all the time, right? We have lost that capacity to be spontaneous. Anyway, to go back to the idea of trivium is about education, is to think in terms of three things. One, learn grammar. I was saying something about yesterday's proceedings and today's proceedings, and therefore I want to relate these two. Education, primarily we are linguistic animals. What does it mean to be a linguistic animal? To be capable of speaking. To be capable of speaking, I must know grammar. What is grammar about? Grammar is about how words relate to other words, how words relate to the objects in the world. That is an essential part of being able to live. Therefore, grammar is an important thing. And it is, you know, we speak about all the time about Panini and this and that. All that is derivative. But the principal idea of grammar is to be able to situate ourselves in order that as a linguistic animal, I can be living, not eternally preparing for a higher salary, right? Second thing that was taught, used to be taught, is, this is universal, not just in India, all over. The second thing was about logic. Why is logic important? And logic is not one thing, it's one damn thing after another. But all of them exhibit a particular future. To be able to think in a way that is coherent. If you are not coherent, you are not living. Right? So to be able to capable of thinking you need to learn logic. In logic, what do you say? You think in terms of an assertion, which you claim want to assert. It is either true or false. That means you want to establish a closure to the issue on hand as to whether it is true or false. And that helps you to be able to, no matter what you study, no matter what your activity you do, you are in a position to be able to do it in a logically coherent way. But having said all these two things, yet it is not complete, because there are lots of situations in life where logical closure is not guaranteed. Just to give you a example I am very fond of, if somebody asks me if I stopped beating my wife, what answer would I give? If I say yes, it means I have been beating her before. If I say no, I'm continuing to beat her. Closure is not necessarily guaranteed in all aspects of our living. It is therefore important how we go about negotiating with the other, interacting with the other. What do we need for this? The art of persuading the other. What is the art of persuading the other? It used to be called the subject, rhetoric. Rhetoric is not the dirty sense in which is currently used. There is a gross reversal of meaning in words. Rhetoric is about, notwithstanding the fact, I walk alone, I do not walk either ahead or behind. I want to be able to interact with the other. I have differences with the other, but I want to be able to persuade for our common good. Call it politics if you will, not the politics of our contemporary times, which is backstabbing. Politics is the art of negotiating with the other, interacting with the other, whether we can arrive at a common good. That is, first of all, common good is not known. What is common good is not known. Even now, philosophy engages at a very, very deep level about what is morally compelling, what is ethically binding, right? Therefore, this is a perpetual activity in which you as an autonomous, liberated individual, intellectual is, everybody is an intellectual in one way or another. This is only if I want to get promoted, I will want to put a designation between a couple of initials, doctor, professor, this and that. But everybody is supposed to be capable of doing this by virtue of being a linguistic animal. Rhetoric is supposed to equip you with the capacity to deal with the other. We have forgotten that totally, so much so, yesterday's discussion and today's discussions or felicitations ignore this point. I finally want to, I thought what to me is important is not that I agree with much of what Professor Sangal says, but Professor Sangal is capable of engaging at this level of articulation of what education is all about. He has the capacity to be able to distinguish the academic marketplace from the other marketplace, at the same time interact with the other by virtue of his capacities for rhetoric. Right? What has replaced this kind of education called trivium? I'll briefly say and conclude. And that relates to what we are doing today and yesterday and what we will be doing for a couple of decades more, at least. After the so-called Copernican revolution, in which the geocentric theory was replaced by the heliocentric theory, and it is not the case. If you have studied enough of philosophy of science, you would know the heliocentric model is any more successful than the other model. It is not. it has a lesser number of epicycles. Not that it is exactly describes, but that's besides the point. What is the trivium has been replaced by quadrivium. Quadrivium means 4. What were they? Not logic, not grammar, not rhetoric, but algebra, geometry, astronomy, and music. It is not totally divorced from the trivium. In the sense, algebra is somewhat like logic. And similarly, music is somewhat like rhetoric. The other two too you can interpret. The role of metaphors in our lived life is enormous. We think language is very precise. We complain about machines not translating very well. But believe me, no matter what you do, as a communication theorist, I am a communication theorist, I will tell you, between an expression and communication, there is an eternal tension. An expression stands for something by definition, by closure, by consent, by political arrangement, by social arrangement, by whatever. Communication, on the other hand, is a process wherein you and the other begin to share. My first lecture in communication theory, of which he is one of the, Professor Sangal has been a victim, started with saying what is communication. To communicationem is a word from Latin, which it translates to share. We never ask this question about what can be shared between what else can be shared. The fact that we have been talking about today, we should be interacting with the other, we should be doing this, we should be doing that, relate to the society, technology, this, that, all that has to be done for sure. They are preparing for living, not living. Is to ask this question, what is it that can be shared before before other things can be shared? Language is one. That is the reason why communication theory is important. Just to, I will take half a minute more. After Russia became USSR, the godless Russia. I mean, I'm not prescribing that you should be believing in God, but I just want to state there is this tourism, and some foreigners used to come, and the tourist guide used to go in a bus and say, okay, here is some place where apparently it is dedicated to a woman who under some mysterious circumstances born who has given birth to a child, not given birth, but produced a child. Right? She is referring to the Immaculate Conception. That is, I suppose those of you who know a little bit of Christianity would know there is this idea of Immaculate Conception, right? So, Virgin Mary gave birth to Christ, and being godless, the tourist guide didn't know what expression to use. That's the kind of tension I was referring to between an expression and communication. Beautifully articulated by a poet like T.S. Eliot, who says, how can I explain to you all that has happened is events, not what has happened. Communication is a process which must eternally struggle with expression to be able to share with the other. And what Sangal, in my view, notwithstanding all these AI technologies, this, that, and all, has lived up to the ideal of struggling to be able to follow that idea of language, and that is the reason why is an AI, suppose, and language building and all that tracing it to Pawnee and what have you. It is that autonomous way of living wherein he is an autonomous individual, not guided by the other, but capable of independently thinking and acting. Now, I will not say more than this, because in my tradition, a student or a disciple is never prized on his face. I can speak about him behind or with others, but not before him. I wish him and Nisha and his family great happiness in future, and I am sure he will continue to be autonomous and continue to lead the life he wants to lead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I request Professor B.K. Murthy from IIT Bhilai.
Thank you very much, Professor P. Janaranan, for inviting me. I'm a little bit odd man out. I'm neither a bureaucrat now helping this institution, nor a technocrat and helping the institution, nor a scientist, nor an NLP researcher. But yes, I have helped a lot and I gained a lot from Professor Rajiv Sangal and his my interaction with Professor Rajiv Sangal started way back in '87 when he delivered a talk in the workshop of KBCS workshop, knowledge-based computer system workshop at NCST Mumbai. It was in November 1987, if I remember, or 86. I don't remember exactly the year. But that was the occasion I remember very well, where I met Professor Harish Karnik and Professor T.V. Prabhakar also. We three, in a way, we have inaugurated the guest house of NCST on that day. That was the first day of that guest house. And we stayed together for almost 3 days in that guest house. And I happened to met Professor Rajiv Sangal and listened to his talk when I was in the early years of in the DOE career. And after that, again, I was meeting him for various occasions of this various projects from the DOE. I have been funding to a lot of projects at IIT Kanpur, and I was visiting many times. And in 1992, I joined in PhD, part-time PhD from IIT Delhi. And it was so happened that I want to work in neural networks, and my guide, my supervisor, Professor B. Chandra, she wanted me to work in NLP. So I wanted to work in both the occasions. So I wanted to work in neural networks for NLP. So then whom I should approach, and there were no people, there were no guidance and not much. And there were hardly any papers to that. Then the first time I met, Professor Harish Karnik. He taught me how to read IEEE papers and how to study those IEEE papers and what neural networks can do for pattern recognition. And I came and I discussed with Professor Rajiv Sangal, I want to work in this area. Kindly give me the tips. Then he was surprised, and the reaction from him is not very encouraging. Then I tried to convince him that he was telling me that without grammar, without Paninian grammar, how can you do NLP? And with neural networks, it's only pattern recognition. Then I tried to convince him, sir, I know that you are very pioneer in this area, but I wanted to work in an area that, like a toddler who learns a lot of languages, a lot of sentences and morphology without knowing what is morphology, without knowing what are the agglutinative nature of that languages. And I want to work in this area. And at the time, back propagation algorithm was in most of the computer scientists trying to learn and implement back propagation algorithm. I wanted to use it for that. And after convincing him for almost half an hour, he got convinced. Yes, Murthy, I like your idea and I will help you. And he helped me. And believe me, whatever paper I have written, it got accepted and published. And fortunately, I could complete even a part-time student within just 3 years of his guidance, and his guidance is much more than what I can. It is not just guidance, it is just hand-holding me for completing my PhD. And I could finish off within just less than 4 years of, even though I was a part-time student in those days. in 90s, in early 90s. I have completed the PhD. Thanks to you, Professor Rajiv Sangal. And interestingly, after that, I was continued to in the TDL Technology Development in Indian Languages program in Ministry of IT. In good old days, it was MIT and then DOE. So at that time, when he was, his project was Anusaraka, doing very well. And of course, it was Telugu Anusaraka was very successful at that time. And we were thinking of making it more popular. And had he been in Hyderabad, it would have been much better. Then it was very difficult for him to come over to Hyderabad and discuss all those things. Then I tried to convince my officials in the DOE in those days and tried to convince him, and myself and our senior director went to IIT Kanpur, discussed with Professor Malhotra at the time, he was the director. And we said that we are ready to provide the necessary funding for him if he can come to Hyderabad and work with Professor Vidyanand Singh. And he has agreed. That was the stage where Professor Rajiv Sangal could come to Hyderabad and work with Professor Vidyanand Singh and his team on the Telugu Anusaraka. That made very popular in those days. And then Chandamama books were one of the things that he has done, and for machine translation. In those days, after just coming over here, 1 week after that, and we had the review meeting, and I came all the way from Delhi to here. And after seeing him in the labs of University of Hyderabad, which I was alumni, fortunately. So in those labs, when I saw him, I had the feeling of Bhagirath who brought Ganga to Hyderabad. So Ganga to the earth. So I felt that Professor Rajiv Sangal could come here and then flourish it. So I felt very, very, very happy that a professor of his stature who is coming and then working in my motherland. So this Hyderabad combined Andhra Pradesh, my own home state, and he has worked it. And it went. And not only Professor Rajiv Sangal, Dr. Vinay Chaitanya, Amba Kulkarni, and one more person, and including Rambabu, who was there with him, helping as an office boy at that time, and continued here in IIIT. So these are the people which I have associated, even though I am not directly associated with NLP after my PhD degree, but still I have been working with all these academicians very well. And I mean, it was very, very pleasant working with him. And again, when I was heading the R&D division of my team, and there was a program called Information Technology Research Academy. When I was told that it is not doing well, why don't you help something? Then I tried to go into the roots of who has conceived that idea. And very few people come to know that it is Professor Rajiv Sangal's idea. When I was referring the files in my team, and there was a small 10 pages of his PPT, and on that Mr. Chandrasekhar has written something. So those things immediately I got it. Yes, the writing is also Mr. Chandrasekhar and Rajiv Sangal, and came directly from the Delhi to Hyderabad, and then sat with him for here in this place for 1 day completely, and try to understand what is the philosophy of ITRA. And he gave me a lot of ideas, and then we started implementing that. So some of those things, even for my career, but you were writing, I saw that, and that is what the whole thing and he explained to me what is the idea of, what is the philosophy behind that, and that helped me a lot in implementing some of these programs. And thank you very much for giving all these things, and wish you all the best for your second innings.
Thank you, Professor Murthy. Now I request Professor Kamal from IIIT itself to speak his association. We have under 5-6 more people to speak, so we may be winding up in another 20 minutes.
So being in IIIT for this is my 22nd year, it's been a long association. It was by accident that I came here. I was already offered a position in IIT Bombay, and Hyderabad being my hometown, I came here. and I see in the newspaper, there's an advertisement for faculty positions at IIIT Hyderabad, new university that is starting. I applied, and they say, and then I had longer discussions with then Ajay Sani, Narendra Ahuja, Professor Sangal, and others. And one thing that I realized was this is a not a regular university. It is basically we are all on 5-year contracts, which I really liked. I still like, because with a hope that after 5 years, if you do really well, you can ask for a larger raise, and otherwise you could, they can weed you out. Okay, and I like that for various reasons. A academic job is becomes very quickly a cushy job. You get your 2 promotions, you are a professor or whatever, and then you are there, you are teaching the students and various things, and if you are truly energetic and very focused, then you develop bigger centers and so on. Whereas here I saw that there is this idea of we need to do perpetually work on things and deliver, and that was one of the things that this institute did. So therefore, who was the role model for this at that time? Language technologies and Professor Sangal, and the amount of effort that he had put in there was a continuous role model in how research can be conducted, and how, as yesterday Professor Jawahar was mentioning, you get involved in an area like OCR and become the leader in that area, right? You get involved in certain area and you become leader. So we not only had that guidance and the role models, but we could emulate it in this institute. Two things that Professor Sangal said. One was, do the right thing, however hard it is, you have to be successful. If you are doing the right thing, you can work as much as you can change the way students think, you can get them to become better citizens, you can get them to emulate the good things, and you can work on that. The second thing, which many of the things people have said, is his connections. He could find any person, what is it that they are most competent about, and involve them in an activity that would enrich not only them, but the whole institute. So that's why at any place, anything, there will be these implicit and explicit connections that enrich the whole environment, and you become a larger family. And that larger family becomes the ethos of this particular institute. And wherever he goes and develops this. And these two connecting things actually makes this institute a great place. And the seed is Professor Sangal and whatever he has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Kamal. Now I request Professor Yagna to speak briefly, sir.
J.R.D. Tata said, all of us are human beings, but being human is the most important thing. And Rajiv Sangal embodies that. I briefly mentioned in fact, I knew him for almost 40 years. In fact, he persuaded me to come to IIT Kanpur to give a talk and speech and so on. The fact that I came here is because of him. I keep both appreciating him and also complaining. The point here is appreciation, because that keeps me active even today. I have no problem in working for 10 to 12 hours a day today, even today. So, and that, how it happened, I'll just tell that incident, and then see, after my retirement, I decided to settle at ISA Bangalore. In fact, they have already identified a room for me there, and everything was set. My house was there, and then Rajiv Sangal announced that so-and-so is joining. I got shocked. And he also calls Raj Reddy to call me and tell me that, you should go and join this. And in the meantime, my father told me, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to IIIT to join, because then I said, what are you going to do there? Research. What research you fellows are doing? You should stop doing research and stay at home. You can't even handle a mosquito. I say, that is the kind of, so it is that kind of a kind. Of course, I made up, somebody asked me at IIT Madras, why are you going to IIIT, not to IISc and so on? And then I told them, Raji was there. I said, that's the connection. And of course, Raj Reddy's persuasion. And of course, the other addition to that is Ahuja. Ahuja was my student. So these are the factors, of course, Roger. And after I joined, I thought he will tell me, do that. I'm nothing doing. He never talked to me once what you should do. And the only thing is, you can see the indirect aura and pressure that pressure means happy part of it is that you keep doing something. You see. And last point I want to make is simplicity. Somebody, whoever comes and asks, I want to meet you again. I said, I am just we were in that room. I am just along the same office as Raju, our director. So then they come and say, we don't see director's office. Then, I told him, no, he's there. Because nobody expects a director to have a small cabin and no attendant standing outside and, allowing him or not to allow him kind of a thing. And so then I said, no, so that is the simplicity. I was also a little surprised. Once you enter a director's office, first some big sofa, big cushion, this one, attached bathroom and so on, nothing of that sort. And that is the kind of simplicity that is displayed. And I'm very happy to be associated with that. And of course, I keep this conflicting views. You say I would have been really retired and staying, but that, it was his influence that made me to work even today. Yesterday also I mentioned, I can still engage about a few dozen research scholars because that is again the contribution of Raju. Thank you, Raju, for all the inspiration and support you have given.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I request Professor Uma Maheshwar Rao from University of Hyderabad.
Namaskar, everybody, and particularly to Professor Rajiv and Nishaji and others, youngsters who are sitting here. The story of celebrating Rajiv would not be complete if I would not speak here. And my association with him goes for almost beyond 30 years, I think, by July. The first time I attended a workshop conducted by the Trivium, what you are saying, Professor Rajiv Sangal and Professor Vinit Chaitanya and his associate Amba Kulkarni. And by the end of the workshop, of course, intermittently we have been discussing many other things, and then it has we came to a conclusion that that their group should move to or come down from IIT Kanpur to University of Hyderabad, because of course he has found they have been working already, experimenting on Anusaraka, a completely different philosophy of translation, where we would not haphazardly try to translate, put the machine to work and then transfer the information. But it is actually, there's a theory, a philosophy behind it. How is that philosophy? How does it work? It works something like that, it discovers the divergence between the languages, the source language and the target language, and then tries to build up a lens, right, Rajiv? And the lens should be there, and the technology should actually make that lens so that everybody can use that lens and then read the story, read in their target languages. That is the rigorous nature of the theory behind Anusaraka that they have discovered and tried to implement. And it required actually, since then, of course, there were no linguistic data that is available. Okay, we are short of all those things. And with the scratch, we have to start. And then they thought that, okay, this IIT Kanpur may not be a proper place for that one. And then they should move to CALS University of Hyderabad, that is Center for Applied Linguistics and Translation Studies. So that is the, CALS was the landing site for Rajiv Sangal and his group. And they came down and spent almost 5 years there. And before that, actually, I had also spent maybe intermittently almost in a year at IIT with Professor Rajiv Sangal. And then I used to sit in his classes on machine translation or language, machine learning, etc., etc. And then, of course, actually, when I went there to IIT Kanpur, I went with my son, who was 9 months old. And I also went with my wife. And they are the ones who has received us actually. And we were there. We spent one night there. And then later on, we moved to the guest house. And then we have lived there. And almost 6 months we have spent with the child. And lots of learning has been taking place actually, how to bring up even a child. He used to sometimes, in summer, he used to come up with a lot of mangoes, which are famous in UP, and then ask us actually enjoy the mangoes and what's that not. It's something like, a family get together kind of thing. And finally, okay, when they arrived at Hyderabad, CALS University of Hyderabad, okay, is a totally a different kind of story that has actually unfurled. What is that one? Computer scientists from IIT Kanpur, what was the IIT Kanpur Computer Science Department, right? They came down to a center of humanity, actually humanistic center there, with the Center for Applied Linguistics and Translation Studies, with language people, language experts, and also linguists together. And so this group tried to actually put things together and develop 5 types of 5 Anusaraka systems in different pairs, okay, involving Telugu, Kannada, Punjabi, Marathi, and Bangla. And now you see a huge number of researchers. Almost at any point of time, we have not less than 25 of us have been working, and these people are there. We continuously conducted workshops, and 2 different programs are continuously happening. Training the teachers who would do research in this language technology, and also the project to build this Anusaraka. So this is the story actually that has unfolded, and then we have developed those things, and then we have learned lots of things, how to improve further, how to overcome the language barrier. And this is the kind of thing that finally has happened. And then, of course, Chandrababu Naidu has started this institute at the instance of this group, Professor Rajiv Sangal and Ahuja and Professor Raj Reddy and others, the stories you have heard. And then I have been watching from away from the next door, as a next door neighbor, sitting in University of Hyderabad. And at a particular point, of course, Rajiv and his group has shifted to this place. And then, of course, since then we have been collaborating and then doing the whole thing. Okay, the same continued into a different type of project, building a machine translation system where human beings would not actually involve different, let's say, different steps, unlike in that Anusaraka system. Anusaraka system actually, it is once it is built, actually the reader is the target reader has an idea. He needs some sort of training to read it and then enjoy the text in original, okay, as it was said in the original. But a machine translating system will give you a totally an output. Maybe it is acceptable. Of course, sometimes it may not be like Google output, but it could be still a readable and acceptable thing, which you don't have to interfere. But however, as Professor P.R.K. Rao said, when somebody speaks or when somebody reads, I don't think people would understand the same way, right? Each one of us would understand the story differently, right? So even the machines, when they bring out, yeah, they bring out a version of it. Sometimes a bad version, sometimes a good version. So all these things, we have learned as byproducts of the work on that has happened in machine translation, right? So this is the kind of story that we have learned, and we have been still doing in that area. But besides this big story, there is other story that what we have been doing is the value-added education, right? That is the one actually the byproduct of the entire exercise. The machine translation exercise can be done by anybody, most of it. But of course, it has its own thing when Professor Rajiv Sangal has actually entered into it and then tried to tell us what shall be done in the name of machine translation. But the value education is the another story that has actually opened up many more entrants, many more people. It's not just for one group of people or one discipline people, okay? Different disciplines, everywhere, wherever the institutions are flourishing, but all of them, for the reason that, okay, we are entering into a modern world, and this world is not going to be dictated by a single language or a single individual, or it's a democratic country. It's a democracy we are living in. And we cannot accept a single language as the universal language or a global language because we are in a globalization. The kind of interpretation that globalization has actually driven us, I really feel very unhappy that when somebody says that, no, we are in a globalization, we have to use English, there's no other way. No, it cannot be. We should reach out people only in the native languages, and as much as possible, use the native language. The employment rate would increase with the use of Indian languages, with the use of native languages. If you use only in English, the employment rate comes down, okay, number of people that can be employed comes down drastically. You know, if everybody wants in their area to use their own language, naturally everything else you require actually create. For example, when the water bottle has only Bisleri printed in English, is that meant for only for the people who use English? People who don't who use Telugu or Hindi or any other language do not want to read that one in Telugu or in Hindi or any other language? Why it should be printed only in English? And why not actually in a local language? Each of our states are as big as actually European countries, right? And naturally today, use of native languages in order to actually reach out to everybody, not only to reach out to everybody, to create employment opportunity to each and every individual. The only goal is actually to overcome the language barrier and still allow the native languages to be used. One is the machine translation and another is the value-added education. You learn in your language and you are close to your people, or the what you call the relational background, the relational needs of our family, of our society will flourish, would increase. And of course, aspirations will be taken care of automatically. Okay, this is what actually I would like to share with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Rajiv Sangal. very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mameshwar Rao. Now I request Professor Karnik. We have, there is so much to speak about Professor Sangal. So we all agree with that, but after another 2 speakers, we would like to continue with the felicitation function. And after that, we'll see how to proceed further.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin by thanking Professor Narayanan for the wonderful 2 days that I and Shubha, my wife, have spent here, along with Rajiv, Nisha, Sapna, and Shefali. So I was already at IITK when Rajiv came by to check it out. So I was a PhD student at that time. He had already finished. He had done a postdoc at, I think, MIT, if I'm not wrong. And he had come and he gave a talk and we got talking. And I was delighted that he decided to join the department. And that was the beginning of my association with Rajiv. And then we have grown up together. And by we, I mean our families. Right. So we used to kind of literally be in each other's houses a lot of the time. And both our children and their children grew up together. And everybody has talked about the wonderful qualities of head and heart that both Rajiv and Nisha have and shared with everybody. So I don't want to go over that. What I want to talk about very briefly is personally what Rajiv has meant to me. Okay. So what I want to say here is that Rajiv and I have been essentially living the life of the mind. That sounds a little pretentious, but let me try to expand on that a little bit. I think several people had talked about it. Abhijit talked about it in the morning. There is this itch, this constant itch to ask why, what, and how. That is the source of all inquiry in some sense, right? So we want to know, we want to understand. I think Rajiv, in the concluding remarks yesterday, probably used that word understanding much more often than any other. And that is the context in which I want to, or I wish to sort of expand a little bit on. Rajiv and I have many differences. And the important thing is that we should celebrate, or I think more generally in academia and perhaps in the other outside world, it's very important to celebrate those differences. Points of agreement are okay. I mean, points of agreement are easy. You pat my back, I pat your back, we go on together. That's good. The important thing is, can we celebrate our differences? What do I mean by that? So, both in the academic domain as well as in the sort of not so academic domain, we could have differences, but how do we, ultimately we have to work together, and we work together in the department. And lots of you have talked about how you started this institute and how it has grown and how it has prospered. Right? CS at IITK is actually a precursor. So historically, I think Rajat talked a little bit about it. That's how we also grew. I mean, CS was not a department until the early 80s. So it became a department and then it grew. All the stalwarts in those days, Professor Rajaraman, Professor Mahabala, Sastyabudhe, Shankar, they were all some sense, founders of it, they all almost left altogether, all at once. Pretty much in the space of 1 or 2 years, they all left. And the department kind of grew. So at one point in time, our head of the department was an assistant professor. Okay. And Rajiv also probably was a head before he became a professor, if I remember right. So in some sense, the department grew and flourished, I would say, largely because of the way in which it ran, right? And a lot of credit goes to these early heads who ran it that way, right? And how did it run? It ran precisely in this. It is not that we all agreed. We still don't on several issues. But we celebrated our differences. We argued, we fought against each other. And at the end of the day, we said, okay, you convince me, I convince you. We try to convince each other. Often we wouldn't. But at the end of the day, you have to take things forward. So you decided jointly how to do something. Once it was decided, everybody was behind it. See, that kind, and I think Rajiv mentioned that yesterday as well, on the notion of democracy. The democracy is engagement. Democracy is not voting. I think that's what he said. And definitely we completely agree on that. It's not voting. It is engagement. It is respecting differences and not making differences the basis for acrimony, for hatred, and for othering. Unfortunately, that's what's happening a lot in our world today, not just in our world, even in our country. And in that context, I just want to mention, so I thoroughly enjoyed both the days. So when we are talking about universal human values, so there's the 2 points on which I differ with Rajiv. One yesterday and one today. So Rajiv was very categorical that systems can't be built which are sentient, that is, which are conscious, and which can display affect, that is, can display emotion. Okay. I don't believe that. I believe we should be able to build systems. They need not be silicon systems alone. There is no reason why we can't implant amygdalas or the hippocampus into silicon systems. We don't understand how emotion works too well yet. We don't understand how consciousness, what are the necessary and sufficient conditions for consciousness too well yet. But there's no reason to believe that we can't build hybrid machines which may display these features. Okay? Unless, of course, we believe that, like some people were talking about soul and spirit and so on. If it's completely different from what machines are, then of course you can keep an open mind on it. But my belief is that we should be able to build such machines, not in the way in which you do it today. For example, language technology is, there was a debate or a panel discussion on deep neural networks and whether it's a silver bullet or not and so on. There, I agree. I mean, if you look at data, data is retrospective, right? Data is what you have collected. If you're going to build models purely based on that data, it's going to predict what it has learned, which is the past. On the other hand, theories are prospective. So unless you have a theory, you cannot predict the future in a genuine sense. What data will predict for you is what it has learned, which is the past. Now, if you have a lot of data, the future is very often very similar to the past. That's the kind of Pareto principle that we are aware of. So it does very well in terms of performance, but that is not what is the end goal, right? And that's the thing. So Rajiv was instrumental in starting the AI concentration at IIT Kanpur, which still continues. And one of the things that people tried to do in those days, AI was not about building systems to get human performance. AI was, you can say, construction by understanding. You try to construct systems so that you can understand how human beings function. There's a difference in the intention. And I don't know if he's still doing that, but that was the goal, and that is something that IIT Kanpur still does. We have a cognitive science department now, which is dedicated to this. This is a new department started about 3 years ago, which is completely dedicated to this now. And in some sense, the genesis was, those many years ago when AI started at IITK. So the other, and I'll end with that, the other point on which I disagree with Rajiv is on the value proposition. He had the slogan, think global, act local. Now, I believe that, if we look at humans and human beings, what is global about us? Personally, I believe we have all evolved from maybe one ancestor or maybe multiple ancestors. It doesn't matter, but we know scientifically that we are basically the same, overwhelming the same DNA. Culture has separated us, geographies have separated us. But if you think about what you think are universal human values, as a matter of fact, I was a bit surprised because no universal value was mentioned either yesterday or today. People talked about experiences, but what is a universal value? Can you enumerate them? Which is the same for us, which is the same for every other human being. So you cannot have universal human values and act local. You have to have universal human values and act global. At the same time, celebrating differences, which means you respect differences, you respect opinions, and decide to come to some converge when necessary to be able to function in the world. So Rajiv, whenever we meet, and we have, ever since he left Kanpur, we have met only episodically, but we are always carrying on this argument. Okay, and now that his daughters have grown up, I also argue with them. So thanks, Rajiv, for sustaining this, what I'm calling life of the mind.
Thank you, Professor Karnik. Now I request Professor T.V. Prabhakar. And after that, Professor Madhav Krishna, then we'll go with the Felicitation.
Where is Rajiv? Namaskar. I'm too much of a family to talk about Rajiv. To do this, I have to separate myself away from there and talk about him and them and us. But I still want to mention some episodes which came to my mind as things are being said. People may have observed, he's a very clean person, in his office and so on. His habits are very, very nice. One of the things I learned from him is, earlier we used to get mails in envelopes, right? So to get the letter out, you have to tear it out. So now you have two pieces, one envelope and one little piece. What do you do with this? I don't know if Rajiv already knows what I was going to say. He will put it in that empty envelope. So this is one of the earliest things that I learned from him. This is how you manage garbage. Okay, so now you have only one thing to throw, and it will not, the small little thing that you have torn off will not fly here and there. So he was that meticulous and careful about things. At a professional level, he taught me how to make course files when he was the head of the department. He would tell us that, when you teach a course, you have to make a course file, where these days we have websites and so on, so they are automatically happening. But he would tell us, in terms of what kind of things that can go into the course file. And typically these course files evolve into notes and textbooks and so on. Another concept I learned from him was the concept of nations being self-reliant. I grew up with the idea that we have to be reliant within the national boundaries. In one of the earliest discussions we had so many of them. He told me that is no longer necessary. The self-reliance comes across, if I am dependent on you, there should be a dependent of yours on me. Then the balance is still maintained, right? So all this would happen at the end of the office hours, where we land up at home, and we had chai and all kinds of samosas. Huge amounts of tea drinking used to happen, and we would eat kadhi chawal, which I learned from Nisha, and how to play Holi. And these discussion sessions would go on till very late into the night, as Dheeraj said. I particularly remember multiple visits of Jhunjhunwala, Ashok Jhunjhunwala, who would come, and then days on and we would argue about, they would argue and I would listen and learn about, telecom revolution and how we should build standards. And then the Arvind would come talk about these 5G revolution happening and so on. So it was a very thick family, and I really miss them when they left Hyderabad. And of course, we have been meeting them periodically, but it is not the same. Unfortunately, couldn't do too much work with him together professionally. When he was there, I was peripherally involved in the NLP group, but subsequently I moved away a little, and I was doing a lot of engineering, and wish we had done more engineering. That's the only regret I have, that vis-a-vis Rajiv. But he has been a wonderful mentor. I learned a lot of things from him, many practical, and of course, the thing that I admire most about him is his courage. If he has thought of something, he believes that is the right thing to do, he will go and do it. The kind of career changes people were mentioning, leaving IIT Kanpur and going somewhere and so on and so forth. And that exemplifies his courage, and one tries to sometimes emulate that. Thank you, Rajiv, for showing us the way. And it was, thank you, Nisha, for accepting us as a member of your family. And it's on behalf of my family, I thank you. I hope Sapna is here. Yeah, Sapna, is the one who gave us so much joy. I couldn't play much with Gonu, but Sandeep and Rita and Mr. Sangal here. So we were all one large family, and I owe a lot of things, both professional and personal, to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Prabhakar. Now I request Professor Madhav Krishna. Madhav, be brief. Yeah, me and Vasu, we are receiving so many WhatsApp messages and SMSs.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for allowing me here. So I am extremely fortunate to have been associated with Professor Sangal, whom I hold very deeply and profoundly in my mind or brain. That's the point which is not clear. I mean, I'm very clear where I'm holding. Yeah. So, and what I really appreciated, I mean, like, I've not had a lot of interactions with him, but I believe I'm deeply connected on the mind-brain problem in in a way that he thinks about it. And I believe this ontologically, we need to understand that to have this connection. But I'm not getting into that. But what I really loved about Professor Sangal was you can actually, say something which goes quite contradicting to what he thinks about it, and yet you can be perfectly at ease with him, and that you can just carry on even even if you have a lot of disagreement on certain things. And another thing which I really liked about Professor Sangal was that he actually believed in empowerment and trust over processes. Like I think that's what I felt. He was willing to go the extra yard for a faculty or extra mile for a faculty, and if based on the principles of trust. A particular example, I'll just stop with this, is I once went to his office maybe around 2010, and I said, like, there was a student who was working with me as an intern for 2-3 years. And then after that, he is extremely good. We have a couple of publications with him. And then he has moved over to IASC, and he is trying to get his PhD in IASC. He's working with Professor Debashish Ghosh there. But somehow, he's not getting in through the selection, because during the interview, somehow he is being shot down. I would like to get him here, but he wants, that I pay him around 17,000 rupees per month, or 20,000, which is what IASC would give him. And Professor Sangal told, don't worry, you get him, and we'll find a way for him, or I can pay, that's kind of very unusual, and is something which I understand is not very easy for people holding the position of director to actually say that, upfront. Of course, the student came, but I didn't trouble Professor Sangal. I managed to fund that student whatever he wanted. But that's a kind of a trust, or that's the kind of what you say human values, or connect, wherein I think at some level he is placing the human above the systems itself. In presence of the human, the systems are not so important, and it can be, it actually you can relax certain assumptions, you can relax these constraints and let the optimization problem evolve to a local minima maybe, but that is pretty good. This is what I would love to say, and I don't have many moments unlike others, but I think I have a lot of regards for Professor Sangal. Yeah, thank you.
I will only say one thing, that my journey with Dr. Sangal started in 1994, and 95 we started concentrating on the technology development for Indian languages programs to work on machine translation. Since then, we have been working together. It has been such a pleasure working with him, with the insight which he brings, with the thoroughness with which he looks at the things. And this journey has started on a new platform with Bhashini, as Mr. Ajay Sani said. So we're going to associate with the mission, and we are going to work for a very long time to make the vision come true, what he had seen while leaving IIT Kanpur. So I wish him all the best, good health, and look forward to his guidance on continuous basis to make the mission successful. Thank you.
Sir, it is with heavy loads of sweet memories and experiences during our 24 years of association that all of us had with you. We would like to express a few words on this occasion. Indeed, all of us, student, faculty, and staff, had an enjoyable interaction with you whenever we met. May it be on institute matters, office administration, policy issues, student affairs, or campus living environment. You always handled the things or problems, understanding them at a grassroots level with abnormal patience, and resolved across the across across the table and gave solutions. You have freedom to walk into your office at any time, despite your busy schedule, to discuss and close the issues without much time loss. Your knowledge on any subject is in depth and commendable. Our every meeting with you was education. You motivated everyone with the concept of human values in the campus so successfully. Today, value education has become a part of academic curriculum in many education institutions at districts and state level, thus increasing quality of life and relations in family and society as a whole. We really value your leadership at IIIT Hyderabad. I thank you very much. I thank you for giving me the challenging role of taking up an independent charge, which gave me a scope to learn the subject. I always remember your guidance, help, and your concern, where you used to drop me in your car at Gachibowli when I sat for late hours. On this great occasion, I would like to express my gratitude from the bottom of my heart for a great opportunity given by you to visit IIT BHU Varanasi to explain the project accounts and accounting procedures, which really boosted up my confidence levels. I wish you a happy and peaceful life on behalf of IIIT Hyderabad. Sir, Mr. KSN Garu, who is now at USA, asked me to pass on his warm regards and respects to you and madam. Once again, I pray God to give you and your family a good health and patience. Thank you all, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me here, Professor PJN. And it's a great privilege for me. Professor Rajiv, I have an opportunity to work with him when the ragging students who actually caught on ragging and they were put into like Prashchit. So during those days, actually, I had a close interaction or observation. I was always wondering, because he is a Gandhian, and there is always a conflicting process of thought in me. And I used to observe him, how he is handling his, as a director of this institute, how he's handling these conflicting things. So in that process, actually, I was actually managing a farm. During that time, I understood few things. So when the students were put to, as they think that is a punishment, but no, while actually exercising those things, those students were actually started enjoying the process. They're so happy, they're enjoying the mornings, the bird calls, chirping, very pleasant things in the thing. So then I started thinking, what is the real punishment? When people started accepting the things and started enjoying, so it's no more called as a punishment. And then I started understanding, so we are actually so we put somebody in jail and he wanted to be alone. So we are actually giving an advantage to him. So there were a lot of conflicting things in my life. And if you remove the conflict, so it is a bliss. And if you're still continuing with the conflict, you are punished. So when the moment I understood, so I actually started working out on my conflicts, and I started actually taking a clear path. So what I wanted to do and setting my goals, and that one. The second thing about Nisha ji, so my kids actually, she used to say that kids are very intelligent, but we used to take them for granted. You don't know this, you have to do this, that, and that kind of conditioning. So that kind of conditioning I actually understood. So when I was introduced to Jivan Vidya, the human values here. So I started observing my kids. So the way they are evolving, and she told me to respect them. So I respected my kids. And the kind of schooling they were into, thanks to Dr. Soma, whether she's here or not, in the Sanskar school. When my kids actually, we moved out of IIIT and have to put them in a regular school. And my kids were like, they were lagging kind of, because here in Samskar, they ask right now, they will start writing after 7 years. So, but at 7 years, the other kids are actually, they could able to read, write very fast. My kids were lagging behind. And then I actually went to the teachers and talked to them. They were in different kinds of school, and give them the time. Don't put them pressure on them. So the kind of understanding I have, so they will pick up very fast. So by end of that year, the younger one is in 3rd standard and the elder one is in 4th standard. The younger one stood first in the class. And the elder one now, she also stood first in the class. So I am very thankful to you, Nishaji, because I spent great days with my kids because of your advice. I respected them a lot. Still, we could have good interactions. And they actually, there were times where they need my support. That support is very little to making them understand what the education is. Don't worry much about it. And even without education also, you can do very well in this world. And it's not everything, but it's important. If you can do it, do it. And they are doing extremely well. So actually, the moment I step into this institute, I always become nostalgic because this is the soil where I discovered my soul. And I would be grateful, always grateful, this campus and my colleagues, and more particularly 2 people. The one is Professor Krishna Reddy, and the second one is Professor Rajiv Sangal. With Professor Krishna Reddy, where I started my career, he taught me the kind of excellence, like work excellence. We excel where, and he teach me how to achieve the success, and we have succeeded, and we could have achieved more success. But Professor Sangal blended that success with purpose. So then my priorities were changed, and we could actually see a greater purpose in my life. So now I am a full-time farmer and also a CEO of an agri-tech company. So it's a 1.5-year-old agri-tech company, but it is now in the top 3 agri-tech companies in India. And I have 130 employees now. About 80 of them are farm graduates, and I have 4 PhDs in my team, and it's a fast-growing company. And in that company, I don't have any pressure, sir. I learned how to delegate things with trust. So I have built the 2nd level, executive level team. Half a minute, I'll finish it off because so the way he delegated things and trust and take decisions, I'm doing the same thing with my next level, and I have no pressure now. I'm very cool like you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I am really sorry I missed much of the 2-day event. I'm neck deep in admissions work, so that is why. I have been away from India on and off. And when I came back to stay and finish my career, so to speak, it was in this institute. And when I came back, I came with a lot of trepidations as to what kind of, because I saw very hierarchical institutions have airs, they're not accessible, not approachable, and so on. And I wasn't sure how I can work in such a stifling environment. But to me, it was such a refreshing experience to be here. When Professor Sangal took over very shortly after I joined. So he reminded me of what I used to think in grad school when I listened to Feynman and how he explained things so down to earth and so on, in spite of being great. So Professor Sangal gave me a similar feeling that you don't need to put airs on to show that you have achieved a certain place. And the second thing I also learned from him is you can be very good at research by innovative thinking, but even in administration, you need to think out of the box. So look at the curriculum, look at the way this institute is structured and how things run in this institute. His stamp is everywhere. And that's because a lot of out of the box thinking that happened at the early stages of this institute. And I would say he had a major role. And I really appreciated all this. And it made my return to India and restart my career here much smoother. The one big regret I have is that since such individuals who are simple, approachable, and all these are very rare, the regret I have is this audience is full of people who are above a certain age, whereas it's the younger generation who should be listening to all these praises and descriptions and be inspired that you can live a life and have a career that others admire by being approachable, simple, thinking out of the box, and doing what you want and thinking very, very deeply about everything in life. So thank you, Dr. Sangal. And I am richer for having worked with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I know there are many more speakers who would like to speak, but now we would like to go ahead with the formal felicitation of Professor Sangal and family. So now I request Professor Sangal and Nisha Sangal to come on to the dais. And I request Sapna and Jain probably is not here. I also request Shafali and Shajil, and I request Shafali to help mother of Professor Sangal, Aruna Sangal, to bring her onto the dais. I request brother of Professor Sangal, Professor Sandeep Sangal and Rita Sandeep, to come onto the dais. Yeah, we can put here. Yeah, I think all those चाहिए. I request Professor P.J. Narayanan, Director of the Institute, and all the faculty members also to join. Vijay. I request Vasu to join the felicitation.
The problem with touching so many people in IIT Kanpur, IIIT Hyderabad, IIT BHU, MIT, etc. is that felicitation functions go very, very long. You should have remembered that then.
Yeah, we'll have a group photograph. Here we want first triple IT people all and then with everyone. Sorry for that. Sorry. थोड़ा सामने ले लीजिए, थोड़ा सामने ले जाइए. कौन सर आ जाइए सर. कौन सर. Yeah, after photo session, we have 3 more people to talk. One is Professor Sangal and Nisha Sangal ji, and last Professor Sangal himself. उसके बाद में चाय. Yeah, finish. Except photographers, everyone should be on this side. Everyone. All backbenchers also. Everyone. Under 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Yeah.
So I did a quick math. So I've known him for the last 61 years and 6 days.
Oh.
So how I'll see my professional intersection with him is very little. I'm in material sciences and he has been in computer sciences. So I'll talk something different from my childhood. So how he has influenced me. So, when I was in school, he left for IIT Kanpur in 1971. So when those days we had to decide what subject to take in school in grade 9. So during the grade 8, I and my very good friend at that time, and he's still a very good friend, we decided that we are going to take biology. And we are pretty distinct. So, and somehow I got influenced from him, as well as I think home influences. I ended up taking math section, and he went into biology. And so we entered class 9. The first test he gave a test in biology, I gave a test in math, and both of us failed. And we were discussing, it looks like we have both made the wrong choice. So anyway, and then, well, during the course of event, I landed up in IIT Kanpur, and then came back to IIT Kanpur just like he came to the faculty in material sciences today. But he not only influenced me, I should say, he also influenced some of my friends in school. So in this way, in those days, IITs were not known at all. So in fact, in my school, people didn't even know what was an IIT. So I had this, since my brothers were there in IIT Kanpur, so I had this entrance form that I had to fill that for the joint entrance exam. So I took that form to school. Then some of my friends saw it, and one particular friend I should mention, because I think Professor K.R. Sarma and Professor P.R. Kirao, who are here, would know him. So he says, "What is this IIT?" I said, "I heard it's a good place to go." So he says, "Get me a form." So I also got him a form, and now I'll reveal his name. It's Gopal Raghavan. So in some senses, he has influenced just not me, but many. And in fact, ours was a very large contingent who came to IIT Kanpur from the same school. So these are a few things I wanted to say, which others would not have known about him. Thank you.
Miss, I request Miss Nisha Sangal.
मेरे पास कुछ भी बोलने के लिए है नहीं, और IIIT ने ये जो सेलिब्रेशन किया, ये अपने आप में एक अमेजिंग चीज है, तो इसके लिए बहुत बहुत थैंक्स। इसमें जो बहुत अच्छी चीज जो मैं देख पाई बेसिकली, कि पूरे फंक्शन में जो सिंप्लिसिटी रही, वो मैं उससे बहुत मुझे अच्छा लगा। तो बहुत बढ़िया है, बोलने को बहुत कुछ है, लेकिन अभी तो चाय चाहिए।
चाय मिलेगा सर के बाद। Now I request Professor Sangal, few words before we close the session.
मेरे पास भी कुछ, बट इतना कहना बनता है कि आई एम टच्ड। और एक लंबी यात्रा में अलग अलग आयामों से सब लोग आए हैं, और उनके साथ वो उपस्थित हैं, ये अच्छा लगता है। इसके लिए IIIT को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। एक तरह से यूनिक फंक्शन, जिसमें खाली IIIT की जर्नी के साथ ही नहीं, पूर्व यात्रा के सभी साथी अध्यापक वो भी आए हैं। इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और जो जुड़ाव है वो तो है ही सबके साथ। धन्यवाद।